short background of UNESCO COMEST work on roboethics. As you of course know, the UNESCO is a United Nations organization for education, science, and culture, and UNESCO has now for some time set itself a goal to be the leading UN agency concerning the ethics and ethical education. This is probably so because UNESCO recognizes absolute centrality of ethics for universal and humanistic conceptions of science, technology, and culture. And also there is this mission of UNESCO devoted to peace. Maybe you know the famous words of UNESCO preamble that says, "Since the wars begin in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses for peace must be constructed." What connection does it have with the robots? Well, accidentally, it was the concerns about the development of automatization in the area of military robotics and drones that was the first push that initiated the COMEST project to work on roboethics. COMEST, if I may shed a light on this, COMEST is one of the UNESCO ethical bodies, and it is short for the World Commission for Ethics of Science and Technology, and this is an independent expert advisory body to the Director General of UNESCO and to the member states. And this report, as Madam Speaker said, was drafted and accepted in 2017. And the primary goal of this report was to provide the member states with the idea or the general orientation on ethical issues in contemporary robotics, and also to give some advice on recommendations and the general line of roboethics in UNESCO spirit. And this UNESCO spirit is, of course, the spirit that relies on the values of human rights, on gender equality, on cultural diversity, sustainable development, fair and equal development across the whole planet. And it is also possibility for this UNESCO ethical reports to go further. It is possibility that they can be picked up by member states if they decide to. They can go on with the regulatory instruments in the context of United Nations and UNESCO system, and it has happened before. We all, of course, know the declaration on bioethics and human rights that was made possible because of the work of UNESCO's bioethical committee. The work of COMEST was a basis recently for the UNESCO declaration on ethics of climate change. Well, the roboethics hasn't got that far, but it is possible that the follow-up to this report, the ethics of AI, will be picked up by states in some form or another of international soft law. Okay, so because we are all already very tired, and my brain is only biochemical, I will try to be very short. This is I really like this this little icon that we encounter almost every day on the internet. You know, there's kind of irony in it. How blurred the lines between robotic and human functions and tasks sometimes are. Anyway, so I will just draw your attention to the most general structure of the COMEST Roboethics report. So we kind of try to identify ethically most relevant features of contemporary robots. That is mobility, interactivity, communication, autonomy. Those are not the only features of the robots, but they somehow seem to have the most of the ethical relevance today. And the cross-cutting all these issues is a question of artificial intelligence, of machine learning. What is important, what we identified as a very important concept is that we can somehow maybe discern the concept of deterministic and cognitive robots, you know, because the robots today can fall generally in these two categories. On the one side, there are the deterministic robots that are programmed to follow their own program and so on, and on the other hand, cognitive robots that are it is less clear what kind of instructions they follow. Of course, artificial intelligence is crucial for the robot autonomy because it enables robots to perform complex tasks in changing and unstructured environments, like driving a car, for example. But on the other hand, we can perhaps say that these robots can have a behavior that is to certain extent stochastic. So next, we followed. We try to identify the points where the robots are most urgently included in a human society today, and the areas where most of the ethical considerations could arise. We already heard a lot of this in this excellent conference in last 2 days. So I will just a couple of remarks. For example, robots in industry, and of course the usage of robots in industry is by far the largest usage of robots today. We heard already about the question of jobs. And these are serious questions and so on. But one thing that we also noticed in our research was that perhaps less pronounced in existing ethical reports is that we should also consider that today the humans are working in many industrial environments side by side with robots. So the robots change the working conditions in many new ways, and people will need now to develop new working skills, new safety measures, new working schedules, new education to be able to work safely and confidently alongside robots. Of course, the question of jobs is also very relevant. Another perhaps a bit specific characteristic of UNESCO report is that we put a lot of emphasis on military robotic systems, drones, automatic weapons, and so on. It's a bit of methodological issue. Maybe can we cover the question of drones the same as the robots? but we decided to that this is the really urgent question, and that it has to be addressed. There are concerns whether the international humanitarian law framework is applicable to these new technologies and the situations of armed conflict where the new military robotic systems are involved. Well, maybe I should just mention the area of the area of household where there are many new possibilities of interaction between robots and humans. For example, one very interesting subcategory here is companion robots in the realm of sexuality, because we know that the robots are increasingly used as sexual toys, and this opens a whole lot of questions about our values of love and intimacy, and also the questions of legal regulation of robots used in this way. The area of education is, of course, extremely important for UNESCO, because educational robots can be extremely important learning tool for children. On the other hand, there are concerns that in certain conditions they can replace the teacher in a way that's not really good. Well, another area where that we tackled was the questions of ethical and legal regulations, and we did a comprehensive comprehensive analysis of existing ethical codes and legal regulations. And just to maybe just to sum up, this four dilemmas of regulation can show the problems that today's regulation of robotics can face. The dilemma of keeping up with these rapid technological advances, the dilemma of striking a balance between stimulating innovation on the one hand and protecting human fundamental values and rights on the other hand. The dilemma between affirming these existing social norms or nudging somehow these norms in the new and different directions and so on. And the balancing between effectiveness and legitimacy. So these are typical. These four dilemmas describe the typical situation that today's regulators face, and that the situation on which the ethical analysis must also give us some answers. Ethical challenges. We could broadly categorize the ethical challenges in these three categories: responsibility, agency, or agency in quotation marks, as we already know why, and the value frameworks. Of course, the questions of responsibility tackle this dispersity of responsibility today in today's techno environment. Typically, there is this shared responsibility. We talk about shared responsibility between robot designers, engineers, programmers, manufacturers, investors, sellers, users, and we don't really have the proper tools how this distribution of responsibilities should go on in a responsible manner. On the other hand, we have the questions of agency, or agency in quotation marks. Of course, I completely agree with what was already said in our discussions before. There are very clear differences between human agency and robotic agency. But on the other hand, the robots really really change human practices, and they change how the quality of a human-robot relationship can guide the design, implementation, and the use of robots. Without going into the question of moral status of the robots or machine ethics, we have to tackle the question of agency of these machines, or agency in quotation marks, because we live in the area of increased automatization of all the processes, driving, for example, and it's really the most urgent ethical questions that emerges is: do we have to draw the line? Do we have to draw the line where we don't give up our human agency to the agency in a quotation mark that happens in the automation of the processes? Of course, for the utilitarian ethical universum, the answer is relatively simple. If it is efficient and good after the final calculation, then we should give up our agency and delegate it to the agency. But there are other considerations on the table. Is there an area where we really don't want to give up our human agency in these processes? Okay, it's basically this. So do we need to consider the degree of autonomy that can reasonably be left to the machine, and where the meaningful human control must be retained? So I would say that this is perhaps the crucial ethical questions in UNESCO's report. And we discussed this a lot with the engineers that collaborated in our group, and really see this situation in their daily work with the machines. So the final part of the report gives some recommendations, and for example, there is a recommendation that states and state agents should develop further the codes of ethics for robotics and roboticists, that they should always be developed and implemented, revisited, updated, and they should do this in a multidisciplinary way. It's really important for this to be a multidisciplinary project, not just limited in a circle of lawyers or engineers. Ethics also needs to be part of the design process of robotic technologies. We can use the concept of value sensitive approach, value sensitive design approach. So design of the machines that is sensitive to the moral values, and which can somehow embed the moral values into the designing of the machines. This is also one of the important recommendations. I think that the if you read it, it's actually precautionary principle reformulate it a bit for the robotic for the field of robotics. So the new robotic technologies should be perhaps in certain conditions introduced in a small scale, well-monitored settings, and then the implications of these technologies on human practices, experiences, and so on should be studied, and then after that they should be used in the value-sensitive design of the robots and so on. Public discussions about the implications of robotic technologies is extremely important. The roboethics should come out of the conference rooms of experts. It should go into the public, into the schools, into the forum, and so on. And this is extremely important in these times of the new fourth industrial revolution. People have to develop a critical attitude and knowledge about technologies to be able to collaborate in the democratic process that can perhaps construct regulations and so on. I'm sorry, my biochemical brain is just on the end of its abilities. Another of a set of recommendations deals with the implication of robotics on the jobs, and well, I won't go further into this. I would just like to remark that I really like the Professor Opio's observation in the morning about the question of ownership of the robotics, because unfortunately the question of ownership usually falls out of the scope of ethical discourses. On the other hand, the economic discourses don't deal with the questions of ownership in a way that ethics would like to see it. So the question of ownership, if you want the robots as a means of production, is really important issue, and I'm not sure if it is really tasks for the ethics, but it is definitely tasks for the public discussion and for democratic. Yes, 5 minutes. Thank you. For the democratic inclusions of people in these public discussions. Okay, so the last sets of our recommendations deals with okay, I'll leave that. With the military and paramilitary aspects of new automatic technologies, automatization. For example, the use of drones raises a lot of ethical and legal questions, and there is a strong. We identified a strong moral principle against using an armed robot in killing another human being. It's either in the declared armed conflict or in counterinsurgency operations. This is becoming more and more normal type of warfare, but I think we firmly recommend that the states should reconsider this practice. Autonomous weapons, even further on, it's ethically unacceptable, and we argue that the human control over weapon systems and the use of force must be retained. and considering the potential speed of development of autonomous weapons, there is really an urgent need, and also the International Committee of Red Cross has urged the same. It is really an urgent need to determine the kind and degree of human control over the operation of weapon systems, so that we could, these new weapons could, at least as much as it is possible, comply with legal obligations or laws of war, and satisfy basic ethical and societal considerations. Of course, it is really sensitive issue to speak about ethics in war, but again, it's a border issue, and we shouldn't turn our blind eye to that. Also, it is important that states should draw policies on the use of drones in surveillance, policing, and other non-military contexts. Drones are everywhere. They're invading our privacy. They're exposing us to situations that were unthinkable not so many years ago. And again, also the private use of these new machines should be regulated with much more care. Their areas of operation should be put to strict control for safety, privacy, and legal reasons. You all remember how recently the drones stopped the air traffic in a big airport in the UK. So, well, the UNESCO report could be read on this address, and when our brains start to work better after a couple of days, you could use the Google robot and type UNESCO COMEST reports, and you will find it there. I hope you got at least big data, artificial intelligence, where the all these things that are connected work as sensors, and they gather large quantities of data, and this data is accumulating in the clouds as a big data. And it didn't had much of sense only a couple of years ago, but now with AI and machine learning technologies, they can read it, they can make sense out of it. Now we have this triangle that opens a lot of new ethical questions and challenges for ethicists to work on.
Okay, thank you very much.